Welcome to the Law School Insider, where we have conversations with students, lawyers, and employers.
Succeeding in law school is something that you must prepare for, not only before you begin, but throughout your law school journey, and that's what this podcast is all about. I am your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis, and I will draw from my over 20 years of experience in the college admission field, as well as bring forth the experiences of others as we delve deeper into the issues. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Law School Insider. I'm your host, Dr. Christopher Lewis. I am so excited to have you back again this week. And this week, I am really excited to be able to have Nicole Abbood. And Nicole is the Gen Y lawyer. And if you've never heard her podcast, it is a great podcast for lawyers, for new lawyers, young lawyers, and for the Gen Y crew that are out there, but really for any lawyer that's out there. And she covers on her podcast so many great concept areas that even if you are not a lawyer yet, you should be listening to that show, just like you should be listening to our show here. And if you're here, you are listening. But she is covering a ton of stuff to be able to help you to be able to transition well into your career and beyond. And today we're going to be talking about the journey that she went through, not only to find that this is really what she wants to do, but also to talk a little bit about the show, the genesis of it, where it's going, and maybe some other tidbits too. So all of that being said, Nicole, thanks so much for being on the show this week.
Dr. Lewis, thank you so much for inviting me and for allowing me to join you and your audience members.
You know, I'm so excited to be able to have you on. I had seen some information about your show, read some information about your show. I think it was in the ABA Journal.
Yes.
Yes. I mean, talk about press. That's great. And I wanted to, once I saw that, I wanted to talk to you because of what we talk about, law school success, and what you're talking about the success and being able to find success in your career. Dovetails great. And after listening to a few of your episodes, you're doing some great stuff, and I really appreciate the message that you're sharing out there.
Thank you.
Now, to start today, I want to go back in time a little bit because you didn't start here. This is not where you started.
Nope.
So I want to go back to the beginning, and I want to talk to you about first, what was it about the law that drew you in, and what made you want to not only go into the field, but actually go through law school and then get into your career?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is a question I've been asked many, many times. I'm sure a lot of current law students and lawyers get asked this question. And I just don't have a perfect answer other than it's something I've always wanted to do and become. Growing up, just like many of your listeners, I'm sure, I heard my parents kind of encouraged me to become a lawyer. People who met me encouraged me to become a lawyer because they saw that I love to talk, I love to argue, which is a very common thing, right? So I was kind of encouraged to become one, and I always wanted to become one. I think part of that appeal to me was just being able to be in a position of, essentially in a position of power, right? To be able to help others, to have that authority and to actually effectuate change, and not too many other positions offer that, or professions, I should say. So I had that in mind, and I just applied to law school during college. It wasn't even something I stopped to think about. I mean, sure, in college, I had different thoughts about various majors and what else I could do with my life aside from being a lawyer, but that was kind of always at the top, and I went through with it.
So let's talk about that journey through law school now. So you decided you wanted to do law school, you got accepted to law school, and as you were going through law school, were there certain activities, things, programs that you took part in that really helped shape who you were, but also helped shape kind of your thoughts about the law and where you wanted to end up practicing?
Yeah. So just to make a general statement, I actually loved law school, which I know not a lot of lawyers actually enjoyed, but I loved it. At times it was a love-hate relationship. Sure, I didn't enjoy the long hours and the endless cases I had to read, but overall, I just loved being in that academic setting. So that was a good experience for me. When I was in law school, I thought I wanted to practice family law. I actually didn't really know much about it. I was just really drawn to divorce, which is strange, but I was drawn to it. So I actually took all those classes, all the classes my school offered. And luckily they offered a lot of practical skills classes in the family law realm, and they were taught by judges. So it was amazing. So I took all those classes, kind of loaded up on them. And at the same time, I knew that getting actual real life experience was going to take me far. Because sure, you can learn everything you can in class, but nothing beats getting hands-on experience. So I spent 2 summers externing, and actually my entire third year, my 3L year, I had 2 externships going on at the same time, and both of them at family law firms. And so through those internships, I kind of realized that I don't necessarily love family law, but it was still something I liked more than any other area. It's the only area that really interested me enough and intrigued me enough to want to at least stick it out and see what it's like as a practicing attorney. So the externships really served me well. I think another thing that I did during law school that I am still benefiting from now is actually participating in a lot of the student organizations or associations. And I know that schools differ as to how much emphasis should be placed on academia as opposed to just socializing on campus, but most meetings were during lunch, and I attended just about every student organization's meetings. And it wasn't just for the free pizza that they were giving out. It was actually to essentially network, right? I wanted to meet other law students. I wanted to know who they were, and I wanted them to know who I was, and just kind of get involved on campus, because this was the place I was going to spend the next 3 years. So yeah. And the reason I say it's still serving me now is because not only did I create very strong bonds with other people, other students that I still maintain to this day, but because of the brand, I suppose, that I started building when I was in law school, which was someone who volunteered their time and participated in activities and was a helpful person, I'm still known as that person now as a lawyer. And I still get contacted by law students who are in these organizations with me, asking me to either to participate in something because they know I'm a reliable person or they know I'm interested. So all these activities that I did in law school, I'm still feeling the effects of today.
Now, after law school, you made the transition into your career. You're on a different path.
Yeah.
As you are now transitioning out of that career. So let's talk a little bit about what was the pathway that you chose for yourself, and what was it about it that made you make the transition into, one, starting your podcast, the Gen Y Lawyer, and kind of sharing the message there, but also now to transition out of what you're doing?
Yeah, so this has been a 5-year journey, and it felt like it too. And I know in the grand scheme of things, 5 years is nothing, but when you're actually going through it, it feels like eternity. So going back to when I was in law school, like I said, I thought family law was what I wanted to do. I interned in it, I got experience, and I was lucky enough to find a part-time job when I graduated in family law at a family law office. And you got to keep in mind, I graduated in 2011. So the economy wasn't necessarily as well, not that it's amazing right now, but it definitely was way worse in 2011. So we were still kind of reeling from the recession. So part-time was way more than what many of my colleagues were able to find, or classmates, I should say. So I took it. I took it in family law. I felt very lucky because that's what I wanted to do. And it took about a few months for me to realize that I hated it. There was nothing about family law that I loved. I hated working with the clients I was working with. I didn't enjoy going into work, right? There was nothing about it that I liked. And this is something I kind of struggled with for a while because I wasn't sure if it was the practice area. So I wasn't sure if it was just family law or if this is something deeper and bigger. So I started exploring other practice areas. Luckily, my employer liked me enough to allow me to test out other areas. And like I said, because I was part-time, I had the time to actually play around and explore other practice areas. So I did that. I did that for a few years. And about 3 years later, so this was my 3rd year of practice, I made the decision to go solo because that's something that I've always wanted to do as well. I was always inclined to want to be a business owner and run my own practice. So at that 3rd year, I decided I'm just going to do it. And at that point, I decided, you know what? Family law is not what I want to do. I'm going to drop that. I'm not sure litigation is what I want to do in general. So I made the decision that the practice was going to be transactional, and I was going to focus on an area of individuals that I really loved and really wanted to work with and kind of understood, and that was the fashion industry. So that's what I based my practice on. It was really focusing on those individuals in the fashion industry. So designers, models, those kind of individuals. And obviously starting my practice was amazing. I was on a high. It felt great. I was finally out doing my thing, thinking that this was going to be the change I needed, right? To kind of address all those issues or feelings I was experiencing in family law. And the high lasted for about a few months as well. And then those feelings of unhappiness started to set in again. And they kind of crept back in, which was scary because I thought, what's happening? Like I opened my own practice so I can escape that. And here it was again. So that's when I kind of started to realize it's not the practice area, because I've shifted around a few times to know that it's not the practice areas I'm in. It must be the practice of law altogether. So I thought, you know what? I can't be the only one who's thinking this or feeling this. Let me see who else out there is experiencing what I'm experiencing. Are there other young lawyers like me? And I had spoken to some friends in person, and they kind of echoed my feelings. And I thought, let's take this on a national level. Let me build a platform where I can reach out to people across the U.S. that I can't just speak to in person or one-to-one, and amplify their stories. If they're feeling the same way, I want to hear it. I want to know what they did or how they dealt with it, how they're addressing it, and how are they building a life that they actually love, right? One that they're not unhappy in. And that kind of led to the Gen Y Lawyer. That led to me launching it. And the reason I called it Gen Y Lawyer is because it's kind of a play on words, right? So we're millennials, Generation Y. But the Y is spelled out WHY, because we are a generation that's always asking why, just kind of trying to figure out what else is out there for us. And when it comes to lawyers, we're wondering, how can we use our degree and how can we make our degree work for us, essentially? Why do we necessarily have to conform or maybe follow a path that we think is for us when it's not, right? Because it's based on what we've learned in law school, perhaps, or what we believe a lawyer's life should look like, when there are really so many possibilities. So that's how the podcast started.
Well, that's a great journey, and it's one I've heard before of people getting a little disillusioned. But it's great to hear that you're finding that passion for yourself, that pathway for yourself. And one of the things that I guess I want to ask you about in regards to the show is you've done quite a few episodes, over 70 episodes so far. And I wanted to find out from you, in all of those episodes, are there common threads? Are there things that have surprised you? Are there things that you have learned that you wouldn't have known prior to? And if so, what are some of those top learning points that you have taken away from the interviews you've done?
Yeah, I've noticed a few common themes that run throughout most of my episodes. I think the biggest one, and I don't know if it's because I tend to attract that type of guest, or that's the particular type of guest I go after, but all of my guests have somehow figured out how to find joy in their careers. And so whether that's in the law or not, but they have been able to kind of pinpoint what it is that makes them happy. And that's what they've kind of built their businesses around, or built their law practices around. And not all of my guests are solos, but I would say a good amount of them are. So a lot of them have that autonomy to actually create the kind of life they want. But it all revolves around this feeling of joy, not just happiness, which there's, I guess, a slight difference. So it's not just this fleeting happy feeling, but it's deep, ingrained joy, right? So they were able to find it. And a lot of them who left the practice, they actually, I guess what I learned from them is just to be courageous. I mean, these people went through law school, probably have so many student loans, so much debt, right? And not to mention the massive pride, I guess, or shots to the ego when you're essentially saying, I'm going to leave the practice. I'm not going to be a lawyer anymore. But all of them found that courage to actually do it, because they really took a step back and looked at the rest of their lives and thought, is this something I can really do for 40, 50 years, right? And we're living longer as humans. So who knows, 60 years? And the answer was no. And instead of letting it play out, or instead of just letting it go any longer and putting up with it like most people do, they took a stance and said, you know what? Our lives are going to start today. We have this amazing degree. Nothing's chaining us to being lawyers. Just because we have JDs and we've passed the bar and we've practiced doesn't mean there's nothing else we can do. In fact, there's so much more you can do. Those are kind of the big themes. Being courageous enough to walk away from what many believe is a sure thing, although I would argue that's not necessarily true anymore. And just being able to find joy and whatever that looks like. And it doesn't have to fit a certain mold, but finding joy in your career and your life.
Those are great messages. And I think that everyone needs to truly hear that, because even if you are not in law school yet, if you're planning to go to law school, if you are in law school and you're thinking about your career, no matter where you are in that journey, you have to find that passion and you have to find that joy for the journey that you will be on as well. So, and that might not come right away, but it will come. And when you find it, you've got to ride it out and you've got to be able to move in that direction. Now, Nicole, you've got a lot of irons in the fire, and you now are moving forward with your passion project here and your new direction. So what's the future for the Gen Y Lawyer?
Yes. So the passion project would be the podcast itself. That's for sure. And that will continue. I didn't think I would be where I am today when I started the podcast, which I think applies to any kind of project that anyone embarks on. So whether it's starting a blog or hopping on social media for the first time, this podcast is something that evolved way past what I ever thought it would be. So that's going to continue. I'm still getting a benefit from it. And I really hope that my listeners who are still deriving value, so that will continue and hopefully just continue to grow. And I'll be able to connect with a lot more amazing attorneys throughout the US and the world. But where the majority of my focus and energy is going to be on going forward is my new business, which I actually recently launched, and I'm super excited about it. But I kind of took a step back and really started to think about how I wanted to start helping people, and specifically lawyers, because it's a group of people I really care about. And I noticed that I really want to work with lawyers, not necessarily against them. So I wanted to use the skills that I've acquired, which include social media knowledge and content creation, to really help other lawyers build stronger relationships and more valuable relationships with their clients. I really, really do believe that lawyers are amazing and we can do great things in this world. It's just we have a stigma against us and a lot of clients don't even know about us. And if I can help bring awareness to the great things that a lawyer is doing and help them connect with the right kind of client, that's what I want to do. So I established this company. It's called Abbood Media, and it's really helping with content creation for lawyers and doing it the right way, not in a sleazy, salesy way, which a lot of marketing companies will do that for lawyers. But hopefully I can bring my knowledge of being a lawyer to be able to help other lawyers and help the profession really just kind of change the culture.
Well, that sounds really exciting, and I look forward to hearing more about where that goes and how, and kind of the response as you move forward with that, because thinking outside of the box is something that all lawyers need to be able to do. A JD degree is so transferable, and it can be used in so many different ways. And I love that you have found a way to be able to use your passion and tie that into working with a population that you know, that you appreciate, that you want to keep working with, because I think that's going to really help you in not only being successful, but also in showing the passion that you have to your clients and to be able to really help your clients to be successful too.
Mm-hmm. Right, exactly. And I think a lot of law students believe or hear that, sure, a JD is transferable and you can do other things with it, but usually those other things, those other positions are somewhat related, right? So they're either in politics, in government, something like that. But I'm here to tell you and show you that the lawyers I know have way departed from anything that a JD would be needed for, and they're still making it work. And if anything, they're even more successful than a person who doesn't have a JD, because it's the skills really that you're learning in law school that you're applying. So don't be afraid to go even way beyond just what you would think a JD is needed for.
Great thoughts, great advice. Are there any final thoughts, any final words of wisdom that you might want to share with students that are thinking about law school or students that are currently in law school as they are moving through that process, working toward graduation and looking at their future in the law?
So let's see, I can give two separate pieces of advice. So those who are considering going to law school, I would really say think long and hard about it, right? This is not just a quick decision that needs to be made, and don't give in to any pressures that you might be feeling from others. If you don't feel it in your heart to be a lawyer, then don't feel pressure to go to law school, because it's a huge commitment financially and time-wise, right? So really think about it, take a step back, try to picture what you want your life to look like in 10, 20, 30 years, and see if going to law school is a part of that journey. If it's not, then don't be afraid to pivot and pursue something else. Now, if you are in law school already, then I think the best piece of advice, aside from obviously networking, getting to know other people, is to really, well, two things. One, make sure you're taking care of yourself along the way, right? Because I think health and just self-care can fall by the wayside when you're so focused on your grades and reading all the cases and writing all those memos. But you really got to take care of yourself and your body and your mind if you ever plan on actually being successful, right? At doing well in school. And the second thing is to not be afraid to start building a brand, right? Start building your personal brand. Start connecting with other individuals, start blogging, start a podcast perhaps, right? Start a video blog, start something that's going to kind of give you some name recognition. So when you do graduate and pass the bar, you can kind of hit the ground running and you're not a complete unknown and you're not kind of starting from ground zero. You have some kind of platform to share with your potential employer. Or if you're going solo, even better. You have a platform to start attracting clients.
Now, where can people find more about you if they have questions, if they want to listen to your show and get connected with what you're doing in the future?
So the website for the podcast is probably the best place to start in terms of the podcast, and it's www.genylawyer.com, and that's spelled either way. So GENY, either just the letter or spelled out, lawyer.com. And then I love for people to connect with me on social media. I'm actually pretty active. So my favorite one at the moment is Instagram. So I'll give you that handle. It's at NIC_ABBOUD. So at Nick_Abbood. And then you can find me on Twitter at Nicole Abbood. And honestly, if you can find me anywhere on social media, connect with me. And I'd love to chat if you have any questions.
Well, I appreciate you being with us today, being on the show, and for the message that you are sharing. I wish you all the best, and I look forward to hearing more about your success in the future.
Thank you. And thank you so much for allowing me to share my story. And hopefully at least one person is inspired and takes some action tomorrow. But thank you. Thank you for the platform.
Well, that was another great guest this week on the Law School Insider. If you have an interest in being a guest on the show, drop me an email at lawschoolinsider@cooley.edu. And thank you all for listening today. And remember, you have the ability and right to take control of your law school's success. I hope you'll continue listening, creating a plan for success that will prepare you to achieve the dreams that you have set for yourself. Talk to you next time. Thanks for listening. You're on your way to being a law school insider. Please subscribe to stay connected and come back again next time as we speak to more students, lawyers, and employers.